Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Frank Messina. I'd like to welcome you to the May 16, 2023 meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission. We have a couple of announcements before we start. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for a scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chairman. Seeing none. Pursuant to Governor Healey's March 29, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law 30A-20, until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately address the proceedings as provided for in the order. As a reminder, persons who would like to listen to the meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 145-613-938, hashtag, or by joining the meeting via Microsoft Teams during the link on the posted agenda. While this meeting is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we will not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Okay, thank you very much. The first item on the agenda is a roll call. See who's here and who's not. Mr. Lear?
Here.
Mr. Burlingame? Mr. Smolinzinski? Stephanie Hamilton? Jane Moffett?
Here.
Nice to hear your voice, Jane. Don?
Thank you,
Here.
Frank.
Sandy Porter?
Here.
Janet Tennyson?
Here.
Okay, we have two regular members absent, so both Sandy and Janet will act in their behest in terms of, oh, by the way, the chair votes here. Thank you, we have a quorum. So the way that works, members of the public, the alternates always participate, but if a regular member is absent, they can participate and vote in the proceedings. We have a rather short agenda, I believe, but the first item would be the minutes of May 2nd, 2023. Everybody was provided a copy in your package. Any comments, corrections, additions, deletions? Seeing none, have a motion to accept the minutes.
I move we accept the minutes as printed.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Jane.
Second by Jane. Thank you very much. All right, no other further comments. We'll do a roll call. Bob?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Don?
With stain.
Right. Sandy?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, minutes accepted. Moving right along. Okay. The first application to be heard is 230119, 448 Old Harbor Road. Will be heard in accordance with Chapter 158, demolition delay of the town's bylaw. Mr. Litchfield, would you formally introduce yourself?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of the applicants, Michael and Elizabeth Riley. We appreciate your having come out to the house yesterday morning. We appreciate Don giving Sandy a ride back up the hill. It was appreciated. As you know, Karen Kempton has provided you with plans for a very small addition, enclosing the kitchen under the existing porch on the south side and a small overhang on the north side. The house itself is a perfectly fine house. We have, as I expressed to a couple of you yesterday, some doubts as to whether it's actually more than 75 years old, but nonetheless, we understand that it appears in the assessor's records as having been built in 1945. While we appreciate your job, I'm not sure that the house itself is associated with any person or event in Chatham's history, or that it is distinguished as individually as part of a group as being historically significant, and are certainly not in the historic district, so I would suggest that you could appropriately find it not to be historic, but if you see fit to do so, that I would ask that you not impose a demolition delay, because what is involved is both modest and not inappropriate. Be happy to respond further, but that's essentially where we are.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments, and I certainly understand your view in terms of the historical significance, and what the members will have is effectively not a Form B on the property, but what's called the Form A.
Yep.
1353, effectively what happened when you had these basic subdivisions, the commission, in its wisdom, back in 2015 when it was updated, and I guess back in the 90s when it was done originally, they didn't review every house, although they did actually review every house, but they performed what was called an area form for the group of cottages. And I think it was noted yesterday in some personal discussions, these cottages have come a long way, baby, in terms of what they were, actually kind of beach cottages, to rather substantial dwellings with a phenomenal review of the ocean. And 448 is noted, you know, in the narrative in terms of its structure. So I know I'd have to agree, you know, in itself, it's probably not historically significant, but, you know, it's up to each individual member to how they feel. You know, some of the houses in that group go back to the 1840s, and others, as Mr. Litchfield pointed out, were probably in the late 40s, early 50s. So that's, you know, just my, without saying how I feel one way or the other, it's an interesting. By the way, just a quick side in terms of Form A, and we'll talk about it more, when we're contracting, or have contracted Eric Dre to update the Form Bs and Form As, and we'll be doing a lot more investigation into area forms in terms of things which we may have missed, like we did with 127 Sage Harbor Road. You know, sometimes we'll have an area form and we forget to focus on the individual properties in that. I've spoken enough. Any views, you know, on where we fare, Mr. Lear?
I hate to admit it almost, but I agree with Mr. Litchfield completely, so that must be the right answer then.
Yes, Janet.
I think, well, it's a nice cape in a beautiful location. I don't think it has much historic significance other than it was built in the 50s. And what they're proposing to do will not be a big change. It'll still be a nice cape in a beautiful location.
Jane, I don't want to miss you.
I actually I was there. I felt as if I was driving over a cliff to get there, but it is a fantastic location. I agree with Mr. Litchfield and Janet. I don't have a problem with it. It's minimal changing, I think. So I'm okay with it.
Okay, so you'd feel it's not historically significant?
Well, I did the math, and it's barely historically significant.
All right.
I think 4 years. So
Okay, I think I got you.
no, I don't think it is.
Okay, thank you. Don?
No, I don't think it, excuse me, I don't think it's historically significant.
I don't feel it's historically significant.
Sandy?
I don't think it's historically significant.
Okay, we have seemed to have been in violent agreement. So we'll proceed with a roll call. I need a motion relative to historical significance of the property. Mr. Lear?
I move that Chatham Historical Commission finds that the building located at 448 Old Harbor Road is not historically significant because it does not meet any of the definitional criteria in Section 158-2 A, B, or C of the bylaw. Therefore, the commission does not impose a demolition delay.
Second, please.
Second.
Janet, second? Okay. All right, any other comments? My only comment before we vote is, I would hope that with the frugality of your contractor, that you find some way to put back a faux chimney.
Aha.
And, you know, if it's
Oh,
possible, and
someday.
I know your architect mentioned it, you know, and I certainly understand the situation, but if it's possible. think about it.
If I could respond, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opinion. I'm not sure that historical significance is enhanced by Potemkin chimneys.
Well,
but
we differ on that.
I understand that.
Thank you very much.
Those who would view it from Chatham Harbor, who are non-existent, might appreciate it if it were restored.
Thank you. Okay, a roll call. Mr. Lear.
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes,
Jane?
Yes,
Don?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Litchfield.
much.
Okay, moving right along. Oh, we're going to set a record. All right.
look at this.
We have application 23023, 193 Main Street. This will be heard under Chapter 158, and it will also be heard under the Cape Cod Commission Regional Policy Plan relative to it being in a National Registered District. Obviously, an iconic property that we all know and love. The property has been before us a few times, 2007, 12, 18, and 22. And it's funny, Jane was talking to me this morning, and 2007 is when Jane joined the commission, and it was her first application. So we've been around with this property. We have a rather complete application, and I'd like to commend Mr. Fawkes for the quality of the application and also for your efforts, but why don't I let you speak to what you're planning to do?
Okay, thank you.
Why don't you introduce yourself formally?
Sure. I'm Hillary Fuchs. I'm the applicant, the owner of the property at 193 Main Street, which has gone under various names through the years, currently the John Hallett House. I think you will have seen from the pictures in the application, and those of you who were on the site visit yesterday will have seen that the foundations of the building are in pretty woeful condition. So this is an application to lift the house and put a new foundation, a proper foundation under the existing structure. The foundations have no footings, there are bricks missing, there's mortar that's failed, there's spalling in the bricks. The structure itself is tilting slightly because the failing foundations are sinking. Just to put everyone at ease, there is no plan to move the building, which was a hot point 15 years ago. There's no plan to change the footprint. There's no plan to raise the ridge height. The plan is to preserve all of the existing framing, and I personally have been underneath the house in the crawl space, and the existing sole plate and cross members are in pretty good condition, and we're confident that we can put a new structure underneath the existing framing and lift it back up. The plan, as I mentioned in the application, is to remove the columns, which we have to do as part of the lifting process. We will strip the paint off, we'll restore them because there's sections that are rotten, and we're going to reinstate them around metal poles that will be holding the portico up. As part of our application, we would also like to remove the two chimneys. The chimney in the rear of the building was built, we think, in the 1950s, merely as a flue for an oil boiler. I don't think there's anything historic about that chimney. The chimney in the front, sadly, is also no longer historic. For those of you who were on site yesterday and in the pictures I included, it looks like it was completely taken down and rebuilt in a pretty haphazard fashion, again, maybe in the 1950s, which is when they built the last extension on the back. And the plan would be to remove that chimney and reinstate above the ridge line to keep everyone happy. I won't call it a Potemkin chimney, but a framed chimney with some brick facing around it, so the appearance of the building from the street would be the same. That's basically the application, so happy to entertain questions, concerns.
All right, well, thank you very much, I appreciate it. One quick question, your application. Thank you, I didn't hear the thumping, thank you.
It was there.
Okay, I appreciate your application and your comments and the scope of your efforts to attempt to save this house. And people don't realize these old houses, without work on foundations, you know, they're just gonna come down and the rot will creep up, you know, to the sides of the wall and we lose the house. Well, a couple of quick questions personally, just if I may. You're doing the foundation, you're not looking at putting anything, basement or anything underneath it?
Yes, there will be a basement, but it's not going to be it's not going to be living space, let's put it that way.
Yes, so you're gonna put a like 5, 6 foot,
It'll probably be 10 feet, actually,
10 feet?
10 feet.
Significant, which means you're gonna be lifting the house significantly. In
Well,
terms-
lifting it while pouring the foundation,
Yeah,
but
okay.
the final ridge height when it's back on the foundation will
Yeah.
be the same as it is today.
Yeah, well, it's just a comment for
Right.
unfortunately our experiences in that part of town. You know, when the wind comes flowing around that area, you know, it gets pretty windy. And, you know, I mean, I know you've got a good contractor, but we're going to, quite honestly, as this happens, we usually alert the building department, and they're usually part of it. Because we've had houses that
Right.
lifted and all of a sudden, you know, we get a bad wind and we lose the structure. And that's a significantly sized structure that you're lifting, so.
That's fully understood, and I have to say, I'm a little surprised if I look at some of the nearby properties on Main Street that have been lifted recently, actually on the other side of Main Street. Some of those look a little sketchy in terms of how they're hanging out there up on their cribbing.
Yeah,
So
you
we're
mean
very
one-
focused on that.
170 Main Street, yeah, it's funny, I had a conversation with the builder myself, like, you sure it's okay? You know, but, yeah, we'll be asking the building, just to be safe, rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah,
You know,
fair
all the
enough.
time and money you're putting into it, we hate to lose it. And, okay, I mean, one other question I have before I jump on to everybody. You know, interesting enough, you did dendrochronology, and I love the fact that I can finally pronounce that word. And you've dated it at 1850?
This is the report, actually. The dendrochronology, he took samples from the live edges in the front section, the half cape, and then there are 3 extensions behind the half cape, and then in the Greek Revival section. And he concluded that the trees used in the half cape had been felled about 1830. And he said that in those days, the timber was used pretty quickly when it was green. So he thinks the half cape was built 1830-31, which is obviously more recently than the Form B states. And that the Greek Revival section was built early 1850s.
All right, so there is some validity to the so-called Form B, circa 1800 for the house and
It's a-
circa 1840 for the store.
It's a big circa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
circa means,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, so you'd mentioned that there's going to be an updating of the Form Bs. It would make sense if
Absolutely.
we were able to download what we've learned to whoever's
Yeah,
updating
I'd
them.
appreciate if you'd share that report.
Sure.
We'd share it with our preservation consultant. Thank you very much. Okay. Don?
I think I'd like to make a statement. A number of years ago, we had some differences, this organization and yourself. But looking past that, I would like to say that the work that you have done on that house is phenomenal. The sistering of the beams, the interior, putting the floor underneath instead of taking the floor off, is beyond recognition, I think. And I would like to thank you very much for the work you're doing on that. And It's been there for almost 200 years, and I suspect it's going to be there for another 200 years.
That's certainly
Thank
the
you.
hope. Thank you.
I agree that the chimney's deplorable. I hope that you could possibly put on a faux chimney, but I have
Yes.
no other qualms with it.
Thank you. Sandy?
Thank you for saving that beautiful building. I have no problem.
Thank you. Janet?
I think it's admirable, the time and investment that you're making in that. I mean, everybody knows that building in town, and so, thank you.
Frank,
1 second, Jane.
is,
Yes, go ahead.
okay.
I echo what's been said, and particularly since I live in the neighborhood, so I think it's going to be fantastic.
Thank
Very
you.
good. And last but not least, Jane, who was here in 2007, your comments.
Oh, I thank you, Mr. Folk, so much, because I remember the controversy, and and Don was there too, so I certainly agree with everything that Don said. I think it's absolutely remarkable that you've been able to save this wonderful building and its history, and so I appreciate it very much. I do have one question. I assume, or maybe I shouldn't assume, are you going to repaint it?
You know, Jane, we've got through most of this meeting, and everybody was behaving themselves.
No, I want the answer
Well,
to this too.
Actually, I drove around it yesterday, but I've been in it, with Bill Riley in 2007. It was my first challenge on the Historical Commission.
Okay, before,
So,
I'm sorry. Before we get an
Well,
answer to that
so-
question, let me just remind the members of the commission, the public, the commission has no jurisdiction relative to the color of the
She
building.
didn't ask that. She asked if it was going to be painted.
Yes.
I understand that, and I
Okay,
don't have
very
a
good,
problem with it.
Steph.
We're just asking.
Okay, Jane,
Um,
yes.
It's been a long journey, no doubt about that.
I understand that, that we don't have any jurisdiction over that, and I don't mind the color. It's just the condition.
There's a range of views on the color, to be fair. We will be repainting the house.
Thank you. You know, I like to,
Thank you.
thank you, Jane. I like to remind
Thank
people
you.
during my first visit to Greece, and of course you do the Parthenon, and that was like 25 years ago, and I was talking to one of the guides, and he mentioned something about color. I said, what, color? He said, yeah. I said, what do you mean? He said, it wasn't white, it was colored. The Venus de Milo was colored, was painted. And of course, over time, guess what happens? And now we use the classic white, so, and I like to say it's just paint. Anyway, okay, I think we're in violent agreement, so we have a multiple motions to do, and I turn it over to our vice chair, Mr. Lear.
Start with chapter 158, I guess.
Yes, let's start there.
You. Start with chapter 158. This building that we have found previously is historically significant. And we just, I guess, should reaffirm that because, as we've discussed, it's more than 75 years old. And it possesses, and it's on the National Register of Historic District as a contributing structure, and it has architectural value or significance in terms of its period and style and its history with prominent people in the community.
We have a second? Janet?
Second, Jane?
All right, well, I got Janet, got you first, Jane. Okay, any other comments? I'm sorry, dealing with a tin ear.
That's okay.
All right, roll call, Mr. Lear?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes,
Jane?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Okay?
Just let me, Mr. Folk's going to help me. What's the date on the plans? I can't.
Well, just use you can use the date of the application.
I'll do April 18th then. Okay.
Oh, the plan dates are April 17th, 2023.
Okay.
Our administrator here is getting too efficient.
Okay, the Chatham Historical Commission also finds the proposed work to be done dated
Sorry.
April 17th, 2023, will not materially diminish the historic significance of the building, and therefore the commission does not impose a demolition delay.
I'll second.
Second. Okay, we have a second by Stephanie. Any comments, questions? Any member of the public wish to speak for or against? Nope. Okay. Mr. Lear?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes?
Jane?
Yes,
Don?
Yes,
Sandy?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, now we slide over to the Cape Cod Commission.
I move that the Chatham Historical Commission finds that the home located at 193 Main Street is a contributing structure in the National Historic Register District.
second,
Second by
Jane.
Jane. Any other comments? Okay. Mr. Lear?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes?
Jane?
yes,
Don?
yes,
Sandy?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay. I think we have one more.
You do. I move the Chatham Historical Commission find that the materials presented at this stage showing that the proposed alterations and additions renovations do not constitute a substantial alteration to a contributing structure located in the National Historic Register District, and therefore a referral to the Cape Cod Commission for review is not necessary.
second, Jane,
Second by Jane, she's on a roll. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Mr. Lear?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes?
Jane?
yes,
Don?
yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And Janet?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And, good, and if you could, if you have that dendrochronology electronically, can you send it to Christina?
Sure, happy to.
I appreciate that, and I will make sure that between her and I, it gets sent over to Eric Dre, our preservation consultant, who's doing that update.
You'll see when you read the report that Bill Flint, who did the report, had a question about the age of the first addition to the Cape. And I don't think he actually dated it correctly, just from looking at the framing. And what I've agreed with him is when the house is lifted, he's going to come back and he'll then be able to get at some of the framing underneath to confirm the dates more accurately. So there'll probably be a supplementary report.
Thank you. One last thing. Have you been in contact with a woman by name of Ellen Briggs?
As it happened, she called me yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, Miss Briggs is a preservationist in town, and she has started an organization called POP, Protect Our Past. And basically what they do is they try to publicize significant positive and negative activities, relative to historic preservation, and she does videos and stuff like that. But I think, and I mentioned to her yesterday about after the site visit, and that she might want to talk to you relative to what you're doing, because it is such an iconic structure, the part of Chatham and the old village, and it's not coming down. It's going to be here for another couple of hundred years. And
That's going to be the next application. No, it's
so anyway, I'm sure she's kind of persistent. I'm sure she'll be in touch with you one way or the other. So
right. The only thing I will say to her is that this is going to be a somewhat extended project
understand, yes,
because we're going to have to bit by bit.
yeah. Especially when I asked you who the contractor was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys, we have a couple of quick things. I guess I could be quiet and we can go home, but no. We do have an administrative review ratification, 1314 Main Street, Unit 8. This was an application for a small cottage in the, I forget the name of the cottage community. There are a number of cottage communities in town. I'm sorry?
Is it Waterview?
Yeah, I think it's Waterview. If you go along Main Street, heading away from downtown, it's on your right side, and there's water view cottages and white cottages, and there's some really, in my view, I use that word a lot, iconic, but these beautiful cottage communities, and they're kind of hidden. There's a small little sign, and you go inside, and there's this large community. And Janet and I both reviewed it, and it was a relatively straightforward application for a simple replacing a, go ahead, Janet.
The roof, new roof, just on one portion of the house because it had holes in it and it was leaking. It was really not going to alter the historic value of it, right?
Right. So anyway, we approved it, but I know they don't like people coming by, but if you ever drive down there, it's quite an interesting thing. There must be at least 50 cottages in there, small cottages. And I took my wife there the other day, and there's people sitting on porches, and it's in the woods, and all that. Like I live in South Chatham on Cockle Cove, and there are two major cottage communities there. And one of the things we'll talk about with the Eric Dre's update of the survey plan, we're going to spend a little closer attention to some of these these Form As, The Form As are the basis of what we did by creating the Old Village National Register District and the South Chatham District. You need to look at an area and provide some kind of understanding of it. So anyway, having said that, I need a motion to ratify our decision. Yes.
That's a good idea that you have, because now, they used to be rentals, but now people are purchasing them in their homes. So if they're not made historic now, we might lose the charm. And-
Well, they're quite honestly, in my view, I know in South Chatham, it's wonderful in some cases that they're not rentals, because what's happening is they're becoming individually owned. And I know in South Chatham, it's got to be, 40 acres of property. And a couple of builder friends of mine would love to get a hold of that. But the fact that there's, 30 or 40 owners, it's a different story, and people have their little bit of paradise and they don't want to give it up. Anyway, so we need a motion.
I move that the Historic Commission ratify the findings by the folks who looked at the property, that this should be resolved through an administrative review and approval and does not require a full hearing.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other comments? The only comment I make is this administrative review process is working, trust me, other than dragging somebody in here for an application that will be in and out in 2 seconds. All right, roll call. Mr. Lear?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes,
Don?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And Janet?
Yes,
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much. Okay, just quickly, the archaeological survey, their first item in old business is moving along. She's working hard on updating the archaeological survey in town. Second item, Eric Dre, as I said, he is proceeding. The contract efforts, so everything is buttoned up. I'd like to thank Ryan Christenberry, who's really doing a great job in making the administrative end of this process work, as well as the young lady to my left who are really making this happen. The archaeological survey of the cemeteries, the Form Es, the contract with Dan Zotto is in process, and it just hasn't been finalized yet. And he will then be updating the Form Es for the historic elements within Chatham Cemetery. So we're getting our old bases covered here, finally. And the fifth item there, or fourth item, is the potential for the putting the national, the Nickerson, William and Ann Nickerson home site on a national register eligibility track. That can proceed after Holly Herbster of PAL Petits our archaeological survey. But again, we'll be voting on that. I haven't had any contact with the owners of the Monomoy Theater property. I'm going to give them a call to find out where we are with the zoning. It's really not our jurisdiction per se, but certainly we are continue to be interested because we just don't want to see all of a sudden lose those properties. And the owner has been at least communicative that he plans on hoping to save the theater and the Taylor houses. And again, it's really not our jurisdiction. It's the HBDC. But I'd like to keep our finger in the pie here, just to make sure we know what's going on.
And they asked for our help before.
Say again?
And HBDC asked for our help.
Yes, they have. Yes, they have. And And so has the owner of the property, because if he proceeds to do the work, he needs to get the property listed as a potentially National Register site from the Historical Commission. So we are involved from that perspective, even though it's HBDC's decisions on the design and everything else. The applications, of our applications, we're this close, and
We're close. I think we wanted to talk to Sarah or Jeff before we moved.
is that what we want to talk about on Wednesday?
Yeah, yes, we're gonna discuss that on Wednesday.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you and I want to talk to Sarah before then?
I can reach out to Sarah.
Why don't you reach out to Sarah directly
Sure.
and let me know if you need me? If not, we're meeting Tuesday at 2 o'clock?
Wednesday at 2.
Wednesday, 2.
Yes.
Mr.
tomorrow-
Lear, are you
tomorrow.
available?
As in tomorrow?
Yes, as in tomorrow. I love that.
Uh,
Well, check your schedule.
I know I have a medical appointment in Yarmouth, I think at 1, so
All right, we'll see.
maybe,
If you can.
maybe
If
that's
you would
the
join-
answer.
If you would join Ryan and Christina and myself in trying to get this finalized, we can get back to the commission to you, for us to finalize the application. The last two items effectively are just what Ryan Christenberry is doing in terms of the whole, preservation planning process. She's taking a hold of the whole thing, because we had a lot of little pieces, and she's pulling it together. And last but not least, she hasn't forgotten the demolition by neglect, Stephanie, but it's on her list, okay? Yeah.
I have some papers for it also.
Say again?
I have some material also to show her when she gets to it.
Very good. 127 Old Harbor, we are awaiting their resubmission to the ZBA. By the way, just a quick aside on that, I notified the architect, Karen Kempton, and Mr. Riley, the attorney, that, I'm not sure what they're doing with the design they're going to be presenting back, but, we passed the bylaw relative to incentives for the zoning historic preservation and giving them some leeway and height and side lot. And I told them, they should take a look at it, because right now, certainly the ZBA seemed to be 100% no to what they were proposing. So maybe we can find a way to do something on that property, because there's no question, they don't seem to be wanting just to leave it. There'll be something happening, and so I'd like to see something that could preserve some elements of what was there historically, even though we are necessarily not in unified agreement relative to the historical significance of the property. I think we had a split vote on it. That's it in terms of our concern. I've got enough to say. Last but not least, I want this commission to be aware of something that happens when an application is approved and there's a demolition, a determination, and construction starts on a building. That's not the end of the process. When the applicant starts to do things, okay, they find out, well, they can't really put that window here, they gotta move it here and all that kind of stuff. And you should be aware, because myself as chairman, the applicant, we're making them a lot better now, because they now call. Before, they didn't call us and it just happened, so we would get into hassles. But now they've learned that a quick telephone call to the office, to Christina and then myself, we could look at it, we could make a quick determination. The chairman doesn't do it alone. I usually call in one or two people, like Don or the vice chair, Mr. Lear, and say, what do you think? They want to move that window 6 inches, stuff like that. And if it's minor, we kind of give them the okay to do that. Obviously, I think there's enough judgment between the three of us that if it's something that's significant and we think there might be some controversy, we'll say no, and then they're forced to come back. That's a big deal, because it stops the construction. But if something really significant happens, I assure you, we would not say yes, and we would force the applicant to come back to the full commission. That's my speech. I'm sticking to it. Okay. Anything else?
Just 1 second.
Uh-oh. Right.
I'm good.
All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Roll call. Mr. Lear?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes,
Don?
Yes?
Sandy?
Yes,
Was it yes, Sandy?
yes.
Velvet voice. Janet?
Yes.
And the chair says yes. Thank you very much. Well, guys, not bad. 40 minutes.